I've talked about World of Warcraft once before, and with the game over 20 years old, there's bound to be several strange discoveries. A piece of cut content, the Forgotten Crypt. Located in Morgan's Plot behind the Karazhan Tower and Deadwinds Pass. Abandoned and never finished before patch 201. Only your body's ghost had access inside, but after patch 730, the crypt was finally open, but only after solving the riddle of Lucid Nightmare. Entering the crypt, you travel through halls of stone and bodies, sand mounds and bones. Past the mounds is a pool of water, which when looking below, you can view the upside-down sinners. The body of water is a lot deeper than it looks, with corpses almost as low as the floor. Alongside the bodies are giant chains and hooks which weigh them down. Inspired by Big Trouble in Little China, Hell of the Upside-Down Sinners, a torture chamber in the film, perhaps this one following the same concept. And why the crypt was cut? Probably just wasn't made a priority, but the discovery and the only way you had access inside in the early patches made it a lot more unsettling. Earthbound, a silly kids game, right? Not exactly. Taking a deeper look into the final boss, Gigas, who is the embodiment of horror. A cosmic entity with a final appearance of a void of twisted screaming faces. His drive for power has suffocated his thoughts completely. He can no longer think for himself anymore, and there are very rare signs of sanity left in him. Primarily, his fear of Ness, the protagonist, once being freed from the Devil's Machine by Porky, the second antagonist. Looking into Gigas' overall theme of the fight and himself is pretty disturbing. The music during the fight, while basic, has a sort of limiting and empty feeling, contributing to the overall atmosphere. That's at least in the beginning. Until his final weakened phase. This is where the soul distortion also becomes the most unclear. The last minute has to be the most unnerving, with its audio and visuals. There's a heavy mechanical whirring, pushing that unknown and disturbing feeling even deeper. A perfect encapsulation of the fight. All this, along with Gigas' dialogue, which its concept grew from an incorrect memory of a scene from 1957's The Military Policeman and the Dismembered Beauty. The creator of Earthbound walked in on a scene when he was a child, where a pregnant woman was beaten by soldiers until she had an abortion. It's a pretty disturbing influence to base any character's dialogue on. The Sims 1, a fun and interactive life and social simulator. With life, obviously comes death and sadness, bringing us to the topic of a character, the tragic clown. Introducing himself into your world during a depressed Sim's life, or strangely common after a robbery. This is also only if you own the tragic clown painting. He will attempt to cheer your Sims up, but fails as he's depressed himself. Grim enough, right? Well, the only way to actually get rid of him is from either hiring clown catchers, or a different darker idea, burning your house down. Sort of. If you burn the painting, destroying it, the tragic clown will burn with it, returning to where he's from. The afterlife. And how so? Well, looking at the games in chronological order, number 3 actually takes place after the first game, and in the third game, it's revealed that the tragic clown had sadly passed away from drowning. You can even find his headstone and the ghost of him at the cemetery. The Sims 3 also went a lot more in depth with his character, with other traits also revealing he had hydrophobia, the fear of water. This invites the idea of him dying in a more unusual way, such as being drowned by someone. 2003's F.E.A.R, a loved FPS horror game where you play as the point man tasked with uncovering what went wrong with a paranormal program. Throughout the game, you notice Alma, who is a paranormal being in the form of a little girl. The game isn't entirely horror, but there are a handful of jump scares and it's just as creepy atmosphere, especially when you start to notice that Alma is silently observing you throughout the entire game. It's a mix between indirect and direct, but the indirect are obviously a lot more terrifying. A lot of the time, it's just peripheral sightings or accidental, which makes it all the more better. I'll show a handful of the ones on screen, not super terrifying, but for a casual horror game with great gameplay, it's really enjoyable. (2004's Silent Hill 4, keeping you, Henry, contained in your room until experiencing a serial killer's nightmarish connection to Silent Hill. The game features the second appearance of a beloved character, Robbie the Rabbit. You'll often find yourself looking through the peephole in the wall into Eileen's room, your apartment neighbor. Most of the time, Robbie will be sitting on the bed with its head down. However, looking into the room once Eileen gets rushed to the hospital, Robbie looks the same until he slowly lifts his head and points at you, and what appears to be blood staining his face and clothes. From this point on, the hole in the wall is inaccessible. Robbie is also seen once again while looking outside the apartment window, this time as a hot air balloon, which again shares the same blood. Regardless if he's an amusement park mascot, how come every single version of him still has that blood? Obviously to be scary, but still kind of interesting. I know most, if not everyone, has played Resident Evil 7. Well, how about the 2016 demo, called Beginning Hour, controlling an unnamed character, solving puzzles, and an introduction to the baker's house. One of the interactions is with a VHS, following TV crew members who broke into the house to rehearse their roles. Well, throughout the tape, if you're not paying attention, you'll miss several ghost sightings of a character, Remy Baker, stalking your every move. Most are very subtle, but even getting longer looks at her, it doesn't make her any less scary. A sighting outside the porch, a second one through the entrance door, outside the kitchen window, above the kitchen door, up the stairs, and the room under the stairs, then finally as you descend the ladder. I think the more minor scares like this can really elevate the atmosphere, such as in F.E.A.R. In 2017's Telltale Games, Batman: The Enemy Within, during the second episode, The Pact, there is camera footage from a Gotham bank heist, except surprisingly showing the real dead body of an assassinated Russian ambassador. His body is edited onto the scene, quickly cropped out the following day after its discovery. Luckily, the company was quick to remove it, and it seemed to be a mistake. However, there's a handful of theories on how it was misused. A common one is the real image looking very similar to a stock photo, as it hardly shows any blood. Regardless of it being an accident, having a real dead body in your game is never short of an interesting conversation, which for some reason a handful of other games such as Half-Life have also had. On the topic of images in games, 2003's Fatal Frame 2. The series as it is already pretty unsettling, as you are constantly in encounters with vengeful spirits which you have to banish. A creepy detail waiting to be stumbled upon is revealed when you leave each game idle. Each will bring an assortment of animations on screen. Looking at the first game, it's more eerie and interesting than anything, with the bloody handprints laying across the screen at random. This quickly jumps tenfold into the second game. A hyper-realistic face of a woman will appear, shaking and only slightly visible. The vagueness makes it all the more terrifying. The idea of playing the game at night, stepping away just to return to this horror, which the previous game led you into a false sense of security with its minor idol. And then we have the third game, which tries to replicate the second, but the face just doesn't invite the same feeling of fear. Don't get me wrong, it's still creepy, but it feels too exaggerated. Just be mindful when you leave your game for a break. The beauty of 2015's Fallout 4, maybe when modded, at its base level, it encapsulates a post-nuclear wasteland pretty damn well. There's no shortage of horrific things visually and lore-wise, as long as you're really paying attention, from serial killers and nightmarish creatures. However, there's more subtle, unsettling details. I initially only wanted to bring this up since I found it on Reddit, but in Vault 88, part of the Vault-Tec DLC, if you find the secret entrance leading you into a storefront, making your way to short stairs heading up, you'll find this unsettling statue, peeking out from the debris, which looks to be a human eye in its socket. It makes you wonder who placed it there, and this got me thinking about all the other inanimate objects which are set up all too often. The mannequins in the game, which are often found in more precarious circumstances, such as murder scenes or just general creepy scenarios. Then there's the skeletons, found throughout the mostly open wasteland, often found in unfortunate and more depressing positions, often of death, with surroundings that share its final moments. So from statues to mannequins and skeletons, there's a lot more storytelling with these human-like objects. I struggled replacing some lackluster in-game details that just didn't feel right for the video. Well, I eventually stumbled upon Dark Souls' New Londo ruins, already a pretty eerie location, a town once flooded to keep a darkness known as the Abyss that plagued New Londo. Many of the inhabitants of the town were killed by the flood to save what's beyond New Londo, and with that, many of the townfolk turned into ghosts. Invulnerable unless the player is cursed, these ghosts will hover towards you, with a ghastly face, an open sharp-teethed mouth, dark hollow eyes, and an elongated skeletal neck, holding 2 knives in hand, which stretch out to attack you. However, I don't think this is as depressing as their similar counterpart, the Banshee. Having 2 locations in New Londo, they're not as abundant as the ghosts. They have glowing red eyes and only have 1 knife in hand, and sadly, in the other arm is a ghostly infant as well, which they use to attack the player with lightning. That's a bit strange, but knowing the ghosts are dead residents of the town, sad to think these banshees are just vengeful mothers attacking anyone who comes close as they were killed alongside their infants.